Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Andy in Singapore. For today's video, we are going to take a quick look at this new Citizen Promaster diver here. The reference number for the watch is NB6006 and this is a new design, so it is not a reissue or a rebuild or remake of any older Citizen model. And of course, this is from the Promaster diver series, which is a series of ISO rated divers. So the NB6000 series, they debuted sometime in 2021, and when it first came out, we had a few colorways. The black one, I think these are all JDM models. We had the blue dial version, and more recently Citizen launched this one here, which is some sort of a dark moss green version. Alright, so we're going to look into the details later on when it comes to the specs. And this is a series of mid-range diver. It goes for around 1,300 to 1,400 Singapore dollars here in Singapore. This is for the version that comes on a rubber strap. So I'll definitely put this one in the same price bracket as the mid-range Pro Specs series from Seiko. And now with the lens zoom in just very slightly, let me just run through with you the specifications of the watch. It's got a case size of 45.5 millimeters. Alright, so including this crown here, it comes in at about 49.7, so just under 50 millimeters. The total thickness for the watch is 15.7 millimeters. Alright, so you can see here, it's a really large and tall watch. Lug width here on the Promaster diver is 24 millimeters, and we've also got a really nice fitted rubber strap here. So this is a really good job by Citizen, because you just take a look at the bevel over here. It follows the case. Alright, so the case here has got a bevel, and the top of the rubber strap, or the end here, has the exact same cutout or bevel. I think this is a really nice touch. So we've got a really long lug to lug measurement, because for such a design with fitted rubber strap, you really need to factor in these protruding areas, and I measured, it comes in at around 62 millimeters. Alright, so if you don't have a big wrist, you might want to reconsider this watch. The crown here on the Promaster is really nice. We've got a crown size of 7.5 millimeters, nicely knurled, and it also has a sign crown. Some other measurements not mentioned on Citizen's official website. We've got a bezel size here of 44 millimeters, and the crystal size here is 32 millimeters. As you can see, in terms of proportion, we've got a really small crystal or dial here when compared to the overall case size and case shape. So over here, the Citizen Promaster is also very lightweight due to the all titanium build. It comes in at 105 grams, and this version comes on a rubber strap. So I believe the bracelet version comes in at about 145 grams, and that is really light if you consider this to be a gigantic watch. Okay? And powering the Promaster NB6006 is a Miyota 9000 series movement. Reference number for the movement is 9051. So this is a newer movement whereby it is a high beat movement. It is also anti-magnetic. So I think this is a slightly higher tier movement when compared to the more entry-level divers such as the Fugu series, which houses the 8000 series movement. And now let's move on and talk about the overall design and build quality of this watch here. At first look, when I unboxed this watch last week, I thought this one comes across as a very aggressive, almost radical style watch. Right? It's true to the ISO rated divers from Citizen. Alright, so we've got the Fugu series, we've got the Autozilla or Ecozilla series, and these watches, they always have this really robust, thick and chunky look to them. Okay, so you can see from the case design here, everything is very angular and it is almost slab-sided, no curves to it. Even the handset here used, I think it is almost identical to the Fugu and the Ecozilla series. And I'd like to bring your attention to this case design here. It actually reminds me of the half shroud kind of design, almost like a Seiko Monster. Alright, not quite Seiko Tuna. Okay, so this is where the bezel is sort of half recessed and half exposed. And so I think this step here this cutout here is rather interesting. And lastly, I also like to show you this bezel here. Alright, it's a 60 click bezel, also made of titanium, but when it comes to the clicking action and the clicking mechanism, alright, let's just have a listen to it. This bezel here, in terms of the action and the clicking sound, I think this is the first time I've come across something so spongy. It is almost toy-like. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of this action, this bezel action that is. Right, it feels very hollow, and I think the word I would use to describe would be spongy. Alright, so overall something new here. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier in this video, this is not a remake or a reissue. It definitely has its own characteristic, but overall it remains very, very chunky. Alright, probably for those with bigger wrists or for those who like really big and chunky divers. To add on to the tool diver look, we've got a really small crystal size, and the crystal here is a dome sapphire crystal. I do believe that this is a single dome because we're seeing quite a bit of distortion at various viewing angles. Let's move on now and talk a bit about the dial design of the NB6006. We've got the dial and bezel both embossed with this hobnail pattern here. So let me just bring it closer to the lens, and you can see that over here on the bezel insert itself, as well as the dial, we've got that really intricate kind of a hobnail pattern, and this pattern extends to the strap. I would say overall the idea here is very consistent. Alright, so if you're going for that kind of look, I think it may work for you. And the dial itself is a really nice shade of dark moss green, and I think it works really well for a diver watch. Okay, and the rest of the watch here is pretty much the same, very standard, iconic Citizen diver design. We've got the markers here that are sort of half or truncated, if that's the word to use. Okay, we've got the half sphere type of hour markers here. Alright, and I think this is very consistent with many Citizen divers out there. So in terms of colors, this watch here, I think this overall dark moss green theme here is working really well. Alright, so from the strap to the dial, I think it matches really well, and it really suits this diver watch kind of feel and vibes. But there's one thing that I'm not so sure of, which is the bezel here. Alright, so all these parts here, they are coated with Duratec, which is some sort of Citizen's proprietary coating for scratch resistance. Over here at the bezel, we're seeing a shade of champagne gold, and on top of it, we've also got DLC coating on the bezel insert, and overall I think this is overdone. So from afar at first glance, this one here really looks something like an Invictar diver. Well, I'll leave it to you to decide if that's good or bad. And here's a look at the loom shot of the Citizen Promaster diver. As you can see, this one here, in terms of intensity and brightness, it is definitely on par with any Seiko diver out there, but in terms of the size of the loom plot, I think they are just a little bit smaller than the Seiko divers. And we've also got a loom buckle over here. Okay, so the Citizen logo on the buckle itself, it is also loom, right? So highly unnecessary, but I think this is a pretty nice touch. Now let's zoom out for a wrist shot of the Citizen NB6000 series diver. Just take a look at how big this watch is. Alright, it's a really big watch. It's almost covered up my entire wrist, and to make matters worse, this rubber strap here is rather ill-fitting. I would say these protruding vents here, or the grooves, they're not helping because it looks really awkward when this thing pushes out at such a weird angle. Now strangely, in terms of lug overhang, there is almost none. The watch doesn't feel top heavy at all. Alright, so it doesn't flop around like a bobblehead, and this is largely due to the fact that the overall construction is titanium. And now let's do some size comparisons between the Citizen diver versus some of the divers I have on hand in the studio today. First up will be a comparison with my own Seiko Turtle. Alright, so you can see in terms of dial size and bezel size, the Citizen here is actually smaller. Okay, so it's got a larger or thicker bezel, but a rather small crystal when compared to the Turtle. But when we look at the side profile, right, so this is where the difference comes in. you can see how thick and chunky the Citizen diver really is. Alright, so at about 16 millimeters, close to 16 millimeters, the turtle is no fight at all. Right, it comes in at only 13.5 or 13.6. So a better and more suitable comparison would be with my Seiko tuna here. So this is a limited edition tuna, Violet Ocean tuna series. Here you can see that in terms of thickness, both watches are very comparable, coming in at just under 16 millimeters for both watches. Alright, so these watches, they're humongous, okay? They're too big for daily wearing, but over here I must say the Citizen diver feels almost half the weight of the Seiko. So in summary, I would say this watch here is rather interesting. Alright, so one thing I like about this watch is that it's got a really nice mixture of colors and materials. Alright, I really love the fact that this is a full titanium build. So light, so wearable, and what's more, this one here has got anti-scratch coating in form of Duratec MK and Duratec DLC. But when it comes to the overall look and the height and the proportions, alright, to be honest, I'm not such a big fan. Okay, so overall this thing here looks like a big mess, and in many ways it reminds me of something that is from Invictar. So there you have it. That was my full review of the Citizen Promaster Diver NB6006. Alright, so if you like this video, if you like my channel, please click the like and subscribe buttons. I'll see you next week for more watch reviews. Together with George, Pixie and their friend Rolly Polly, this is Andy in Singapore. We're gonna say goodbye for now. Bye bye.